Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 72 of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined in conversation by Dr. David Mann, founder of HaikuBox, a unique smart device that allows you to listen to and monitor the bird calls in your garden 24/7. Birdwatching or twitching is one of my favourite pastimes, allowing us a connection to the natural world that is accessible to all of us, regardless of our backgrounds or our locations. Birding in urban areas is equally as rewarding as it is in more rural settings. I have always believed that people will passionately protect what they love and understand, and the HaikuBox is a wonderful tool to help us build a deeper relationship with the birds and acoustic landscape that surrounds us, but can so easily be overlooked. Beyond being incredibly fun to learn who is sharing your home with you, sometimes with some unexpected surprises, the HaikuBox also gathers valuable data that conservationists are able to use to both understand and conserve our avian friends. From the impacts of solar eclipses and wildfires to migration patterns, the data you help collect is invaluable in understanding more about our birds. David also shares some other incredibly interesting uses for bioacoustics monitoring, from elephants in Africa and the signature whistles of Florida's bottlenose dolphins that can identify individuals, to the indigenous communities in northwestern Canada employing HaikuBox technology to ensure beluga whales don't become trapped when winter ice blocks various waterways. David also reminds us how easy it can be to make a difference in this world by learning to appreciate and then simply encourage and nurture the native wild plants and wildlife that share our homes. We can make an incredible impact. Welcome, David, and thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you. You've got an amazing product with HaikuBox, and it's a great tool, and I'm looking forward to sharing information with it with our listeners. But to get us started, I always just ask my guests to share a little bit of their nature story. So just really any fond memories of being in nature, how nature's inspired you in your life, anything you'd like to share to get us started would be lovely.
Sure, thanks for having me. So I was, thinking about this, going back to when I was very young. I grew up in Syracuse, New York, which is in the northern United States. And the weather there is not the best. And so unless you like rain and snow, and then it's great.
Yeah.
But I liked spending a lot of time outside, and so I used to get up really early in the morning when I was like 10, 12, and kind of try to wrangle some other kids in the neighborhood. And we would just kind of go bird watching in like woods
Oh,
that were nearby my house. And so that was kind of the formative experience, was just getting out there with other people and doing things in the woods. And then, when I grew up, I kind of realized like, oh, I have no idea who actually owned that property. I just thought, woods are woods, and
yeah.
anyone can go in them and do anything they want. Um, so that's what, like, growing up was, just like get outside and kind of learn what was going on.
Oh, I
So
love that. And I think, the innocence of youth, and obviously whoever did own it was understanding enough that they didn't mind that you were there indulging your love of nature. So which is lovely. I think um, I I remember just passionately listening to birds when I was little, and then fortunately for me, I was very lucky to go and live in South Africa for 5 years in the Greater Kruger National Park, and that kind of exploded my love of birds and bird
yeah.
watching because
Oh,
there's quite a lot of very amazing, colourful and beautiful species to both listen to and see. So I love bird watching. It become a huge passion for me, and I think it's a lovely entry into being involved with nature. That is accessible to everyone, no matter where you are, isn't it? Whether you're in a town and city or whether you're in, more rural area, it's a form of nature that's available to all of us.
right. Yeah, that's totally true. I was just also, yeah, just thinking it's like, yeah, in the dead of winter still, like the animals that we would see are birds.
Yeah.
and they were doing their thing and being interesting and singing and yeah.
Yeah, so your the haiku box that you've produced, I think it's only sort of in like the last year or so it's been become available, isn't it? And it's basically it's twofold, and one of them is basically to connect people better to the wildlife in their area, isn't it? Which is, of course, hugely important to basically inspire that love of wildlife that you and I already share, but which others might not have had that access to in childhood.
Yeah. So yeah, we've actually had them for a few years now.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had a few versions because of all the supply chain fun in the early 2020s. And but yeah, so we have yeah, a community of them, and so we're mostly in North America, in Europe. And the so basically, HaikuBox is a device you plug in at your home, and it just listens for birds 24/7. And then those bird detections are sent to a cloud system, and there's an app you can see what birds have been found in around your house. But you can also look to see, if people are sharing their HaikuBox, you can go like anywhere in the world and go, oh,
Oh,
what's going
wow.
on there? Yeah, so it's a cool tool. When we got started, so um, a colleague of mine was at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And so it kind of started in like 2019, 2020,
Yeah.
so my background is actually largely in oceanography and marine bioacoustics. So listening to whales and fish and dolphins and things. Um, and when I was talking with him, I said, "Yeah, I'd really like to figure out how to do a consumer product for like acoustics, because, yeah, as you said, it's like everywhere. Like there's animals making sound." And so back then he said, "Yeah, well, I have this postdoc I'm working with in Germany who's developed BirdNet, which can recognize 1,000 species of birds." And
Oh,
so we put
wow.
together like a first prototype of this haiku box. Um, and we set it up in my backyard. And the crazy thing was, so I live in Florida, in southern US, um, and the haiku was like picking up birds that I didn't know were there.
Oh,
And
yes. Wow.
I've been living there 20 years, and so there'd be things like, it would show me like cedar waxwings, right? And so when I was a kid, there was a cedar waxwing, which is this beautiful bird. It was on the front cover of one of my bird books.
Yeah.
Never seen one. And then you go into guides and they go, extremely common. And I'm like, no, they're not. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I started picking them up, and they have a very distinctive high pitch kind of warbly sound. And we set it up so it would get alerts like, oh, it heard one, and I could go outside. Literally walked out my front door. I didn't see him, and then I looked up, and this tree that was like, 3 meters away from me, it's just got 20 of them in it.
Oh
But
my
they were
God.
there for only like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I was like, oh my gosh, I've been walking by these like the entire time I've lived here. I just like
Yeah.
have not been paying attention.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
I love that because I think I had a guest a little while ago and he's released an amazing book, a sort of nature guide to New York City, and he we were talking about apps and in particular the Merlin bird
Yep.
app, which I think is also connected to Cornell University's Bird Lab, and we were saying how like this use of technology is amazing for people to sort of like break into this sort of naturalist role that like would have been really difficult in the past. And I know even with my love of birding, I found the Merlin app really useful for that exact reason. Like you can have it and it listens to the sounds, and then your AI found it really helpful for learning those bird sounds so that then I'm able to better recognize them, which I struggled with before because I'm quite a visual learner. So being able to see the picture of the bird as I was hearing it really made a
Yep.
difference for me.
Yep.
But also just to be like, oh, this is in the area, and then you're like, heightened awareness. You're aware of what you're looking for, and I think your box has that similar information, doesn't it? It combines like information about the birds as well as what you're, not just the bird song, but you're giving people information about the birds so that they can, just deepen their connection and awareness of the birds they're seeing and hearing.
Right. Yeah. So the HaikuBox is essentially like Merlin. So Merlin's on your phone, and so usually you pull it
Yeah.
like we use it all the time. We go on walks and things, and you pull it out when you hear something interesting, and it tells you what it thinks it is. So HaikuBox is the same thing, but it's always on.
Yeah.
So you can get the birds that are in the middle of the night, like when you're inside the house, when you're totally somewhere different. Um, and yeah, and so the thing you were saying about like learning the bird songs, yeah, I've be seeing them like being detected day after day after day, and then like listening to them, and then we also create these spectrogram images of the sound. So on the Merlin app, it's that thing that's scrolling across on the
Yeah.
top.
Yeah.
If you learn how to read those, you can kind of actually look at it and tell what it sounds like.
Oh,
That has helped me learn a ton of bird songs. But yeah, and then you like we connect out. You can go like just go straight to eBird, and often so a lot of times there'll be like cheap cheap cheap, and you're like I don't know if that's that bird, and then so we'll hop over to eBird and go look at the spectrograms that they have there and try to figure out if it's actually correct or not.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
yeah.
I love that, and I think that's the thing you've just drawn attention to there is the real difference is that this is something that is in a position and it's on 24/7, and it just gives you. I mean, it's I guess in a way it's like the sound equivalent of some of the wildlife cameras that you might have in your home and garden if you're lucky to,
Yeah.
that you get to witness stuff that isn't, you wouldn't necessarily see sometimes because it's in the middle of the night or because it's a shyer, slightly rarer species, or like your lovely example with the waxwings that you just weren't used to looking in the right place at the right time. And it it just kind of opens up this whole like extra world of experience, doesn't it? In your own home, in your familiar landscape, which is just well, I find it just sort of changes your connection with nature. I think it's obviously great for people of across the spectrum, people who don't know anything about birds and it's their first window. I guess children as well is
Yeah.
amazing for, but also people who are more experienced but aren't out there listening to birds in the middle of the night are going to pick up some great examples.
Yeah, no, it's a great learning tool. Yeah, and it changes like once Merlin or HaikuBox. Once you start like looking at what's around you, even when you just go outside, like a walk in the woods or whatever, I'm always listening now. And so, I'm walking along, I'm like, oh, there's a red-bellied woodpecker up there. There's that like, and so sometimes I don't even have to kind of look. It's just like, oh, I know what's kind of going on around me. But also, it's like now I find myself listening in strange places like parking lots, and it's like, oh, I heard cedar waxwings. In the grocery store parking lot. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I love it. I love ways that people can find that they can find easily accessible to get involved with nature, and I think this is a wonderful tool for that side of it, which is, getting people passionate. I mean, I was a
yeah,
wildlife photographer, and my ethos with that was I always believed that people protect and conserve what they love. So through my
yeah,
photography,
yeah,
I wanted to inspire that love and passion for it. And I think amazing like technological tools like this are ways to open up this passion and inspiration to just a huge number of people across a diverse sector of society as well without, unfortunately, birding did used to have quite a
yeah, yeah,
set sort of type of person that was attracted to birding, and a lot of people from sort of more marginalized communities wouldn't necessarily have felt comfortable. Obviously, there's been a huge move in the last sort of probably decade or so trying to open up these nature activities to people, but this is another way that people can begin to experience it and have, like an expert naturalist in their pocket, really,
yeah,
basically, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I think the idea of like growing a larger community is really important. Yeah, so we like we'll find also like there's a lot of nature centers that'll have haiku boxes. We
Oh, yeah.
donate a fair number. Like if we get returns, those often end up as donations to places too.
Oh,
And
nice.
so, like, you show up at the nature center and, they can
Yeah.
put a QR code and see what's been going on at that
Yeah.
nature center that day and what they've heard and stuff. So,
Yeah, which kind of leads us into the other side of it, because the other side of it is actually you become a citizen scientist. So the data that you're capturing in your garden through your haiku box is then with your partnerships with it is with the Cornell University, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah.
Um, that then the data is being used in a conservation framework as well.
Yeah, so so I can give you a fun example, but then there's the the not fun examples. But so the fun, so like last year in North America, there was a total solar eclipse. So that's, basically the sun totally blocked in
Yeah.
this one swath from kind of Texas through Maine and Northeast Canada. And so we had and so it's coming, right? And so
Yeah.
and there's a lot of studies on and anecdotes about, what animals do during an eclipse because it just suddenly becomes like eerily dark
Yeah.
and so we were like, okay, let's see what we can do with the haiku boxes because we had a number of them like directly in the eclipse path and then, hundreds that are kind of on the edges of it. And so we came out with a paper this year just kind of analyzing what bird songs did during the eclipse with the haiku box. And it was kind of the thing that, yeah, it would be hard to do like any other way
Yeah.
without just having kind of raw recordings. And then, yeah, all sorts of like, and then you learn other things about what people do during eclipses, like lighting off fireworks and all this
Yeah.
other stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, we got to exclude all of those and things. So that was cool. And it was interesting. It wasn't, there's not a single answer to that question. It's like, yeah, on average, birds get quieter. And not at the peak of darkness, but kind of a little bit after it. But there's a
Okay.
lot of variability. You can go to a place and find an American robin singing its heart out during totality. So it's not
Yeah.
like they all everywhere just get quiet. So that was kind of it's fun. Other things that aren't fun that we're starting to want to look at are like there's been a fair number of wildfires, especially in
Okay.
Canada, and then that smoke
Yeah.
will kind of come down into the US. And so we're able to look at a very wide geographic area, but continuously to see like, is there a reaction of the birds to the smoke or to wildfire? What happens after wildfire? Like, how do they come back? And then we're also starting to look at migration because so there's a lot of migrants especially in the United States and also in Europe, but we have most of our haiku boxes are in the US, and so we can see when the first migrant like warblers are coming in and how they're moving up through the US, and you can also see like peaks in the timing of singing, which are often tied to nesting behavior, right? So you can see like, cardinals peaking early, but it's, happens in the southern US earlier than in the northern US. So
Yeah,
yeah,
just
so a lot of what we do with it.
fascinating insights into this amazing world that's around us all that, I think for a lot of us, we're probably not tuned into enough than we should be. And it is really, I think that's the what's quite interesting is actually how technology can be used within conservation to really support and provide the raw data that helps inform what conservation actions might be needed or not needed on, and even the success of conservation actions as well, I suppose. I mean, on a sort of personal level, if you're, there's a lot of movements in the US and around the world that are like promoting like the importance of using your garden as a,
Yeah,
creating this, great sort of biodiversity. You've got Garden for Wildlife with your National Wildlife Federation and Homegrown National Park by David Tallalamy. And, this your haiku box would sit perfectly with people who are sort of walking down that path and being able to monitor themselves of like seeing how like as their habitat is sort of restored and they've planted native species and they see like the benefits locally. But I guess as well then you've got this sort of more sort of larger ecosystem monitoring as well that you and your partners are able to undertake.
Yeah. And yeah, so I think those examples of what people are doing around their homes are kind of like what make us really happy. So early on, when we were working on HaikuBox and we had some beta testers, Anders Gyllenhaal, who has a fabulous book out called A Wing and a Prayer about bird conservation around the world. Um, he said, what difference is it going to make? And that was like a really good hard question.
Yeah.
And the thing that we see is, as you said at the beginning, people protect what they love. If you're lucky enough, your home has any shred of property around it that you
Yeah.
can, plant native plants, plant oak trees or whatever in the U.S. And realize like all birds aren't eating seeds out of feeders, right? Like the number of insects that they're eating is just huge, and basically creating habitat in your yard can make a difference, especially if millions and millions of people start doing it. And so that's what we're hoping is HaikuBox is making people realize like, oh, I have these things in my yard, or
Yeah.
they're flying by. How do I get them to actually want to be in my yard? Um, so yeah, I think that sort of homegrown national park idea is really powerful because um, often one feels powerless
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
change
definitely.
anything, and scientists often feel like, oh, a lot of what we're doing is just documenting the decline in great detail, and so. Um, this gives you a way to at least have some, positive impact is basically like do what you can to create habitat.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that your sort of honesty there because I think it is really I often talk on my podcast about like the sense of powerlessness for people and a lot of my messaging and the people that I try to bring on are to let individuals have that sense of empowerment that actually they can do small things, their small actions can make a difference and also but you've touched on the conservationists there as well and it's hard for you as well like you're in conservation because you love the natural world and you're passionate about it and it can be very hard for them as well to be documenting this and not have like these tangible applications. So I think it's fantastic to have brought forward a product like this that goes into the hands of consumers who have the ability on a very like immediate hands-on impact, rather than sometimes, things take, the wheels of, of progress take a little bit of time when it's at more a
Yeah,
sort of,
yeah,
local level better. But like, once you get into the sort of national level, it takes, there's
right.
red tape and paperwork to work through to do things. And it's it is just well, I love the fact that we can, sometimes technology gets a bit of a bad rap, doesn't it? And one of the things that is a big thing for people at the moment is, there's this whole sort of rise of AI and actually, there's different aspects to AI and AI and computer learning has been used for quite a long time in sort of a lot of applications and like you harness it with your haiku box, don't you? And basically enabling you to process these huge amounts of data that's being gathered.
Yeah. So the AI that there's, I guess you can kind of think of two kinds of AI. One is sort of just detection classification. And that's the kind like on your phone, if you notice, like it'll group all of your pet photos together and all
Yeah.
of your family or days at the beach or whatever. Um, that's that AI is just looking at the images and trying to classify them into like what's in there. Um, and that's the kind of AI that we're doing with HaikuBox. The other kind is this generative AI where, it writes stuff for you, creates
Yeah,
images.
sort of the chat GPT,
Yeah,
probably
the
most
chat
people.
GPT
Yeah.
level of AI.
Yeah.
And those are pretty distinct. And and so the way that HaikuBox and Merlin work are they take the sound and they turn it into an image called the spectrogram, and then the the neural networks are trained to recognize those pictures of the sound, and so that's how it actually is doing the identifications. And the thing with those kinds of AIs is that you need lots and lots and lots and lots of training data. So like, like these are cedar waxwing sounds, these are cardinal sounds, and cardinals make like 8 different kinds of sounds. And so you need like tons of examples of each of those to be able to make that ID. And Cornell Lab of Ornithology has had a library of natural sound that goes back decades. And so they had, all of these originally sounds that were recorded by scientists, and then they had all of their community scientists contributing recordings that they made of these species. And so that just created this huge body of knowledge about what sounds animals make that could be used to train these initial AIs. And so they're just going to keep getting better and better. So yeah, so like as far as technology getting a bad rap, yeah, it's good and it's bad. I think that's the way with everything. And yeah, so I think just focus on trying to use it for good. I mean, it's really going to be people behind it at the end of the day. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just I think it's reassuring, isn't it, that there are ways that it can be used for good, and it is about it is very valuable to be able to have like these AI systems because that to work through that kind of volume of data just wouldn't be humanly possible really at the scale that it's being collected, and that allows you to put these haiku boxes like in well, hopefully thousands and thousands of locations. Do you have an idea of how many you've got out there already at the moment?
We have, so I was looking yesterday. So I look at how many are actually connected. So we have around 2,700
Oh,
connected.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's in like we have like well over 1 billion detections
Oh,
in
wow.
the system. And so and even that, it's like, okay, now that's a lot of data. How do you start asking questions of the data to see what birds are doing? And that's actually another place where AI is going to start actually helping us out a lot more. Because now you can tell the AI to write you a program to analyze your data. Um, and even just converse with it about like ideas for what might we want to look for.
Yeah.
So yeah. So there's
Yeah.
good and bad. The bad, I mean, obviously the bad things are going to get a lot of the headlines and notice, but there's a lot of really good things, like being able to send a text message to someone. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Being
like I was,
here on Zoom together.
yeah, being on Zoom, like different countries. Yeah, and then reaching everyone with your podcast, right? None of this would be possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just I don't know, we were talking, I don't even know why, yesterday about like so I'm a little older, not super old, but getting there. And we were talking about like uh at this place that my wife and I used to work is like, do we have email? I was like, I think that's when it started.
Yeah.
And then just trying to remember like the time before email, and it's like, oh yeah, and if we wanted a computer, we could borrow one from work and we could bring it home on the subway. And it was like
Yeah.
this big floppy thing. And I was just like, yeah.
Yeah, I might look quite young, but I am also of the generation that is like, oh, I remember like when you used to have the phone on the wall and like, the numbers that used to like you had to click around and mobile phones wasn't a thing and the internet certainly wasn't a thing and it's yeah, it's amazing how far and how quickly it has advanced and it's I think it is an amazing tool and it's incredible what it is capable of and things like your haiku box I guess is just it's just the start because your background is in bioacoustics, isn't it? And you mentioned that you spent time quite a bit of your time was focused on the ocean as well, so I guess there's the bioacoustics is great in that
Yeah.
environment as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we have a couple projects kind of just sort of starting up again, and it's really using the HaikuBox technology in them. So for one of them, for example, is in Sarasota Bay in Florida.
Okay.
There's a population of bottlenose dolphins that Dr. Randy Wells and his colleagues have been studying for, gosh, 50 years.
Oh, wow.
And so
Wow.
they know all of the individual dolphins that are part of this community by the shapes of their dorsal fins.
Yeah.
And but they also have recordings of the sounds that they make. And so dolphins will do clicks and whistles. And the one of the kinds of whistles they make is called a signature whistle, and it's basically kind of like a name, but it's more
Oh,
like
okay.
me going David, David,
Yeah.
David,
So
David.
you sort of saying your own, signing off your
Yeah,
letter or something.
yeah. And so we're making a version of HaikuBox for his group where we're basically putting them around Sarasota Bay, and they're listening for these dolphin whistles 24/7. And then there's another group that's working, Layla Sayeg at Woods Hole Oceanographic and Frans Jensen at Aarhus University in Denmark are working on neural nets that can identify the individuals of those dolphins.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and that's actually all right now going, the first test ones we got out in the past month, they're going into the HaikuBox like cloud system. So that's kind of fun to
Oh, yeah,
kind of
exciting.
come
And
full circle on that.
yeah, and I think it's because I mean bioacoustics is, if I'm correct, it's basically the study of of sound, both production, the transmission, and the receiving of it by
By
living
animals, yeah.
organisms.
Yeah, it's strict, it's focused, yeah, mostly on animals.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's a lot of aspects to it. It's like, how do the animals use it to communicate? What are they trying to say to each other? How does noise affect their communication? What do they do when it's noisy or not noisy? So yeah, what are they capable of hearing?
yeah.
There's
Yeah, I think probably my experience of it would be around elephants when I was in Africa. There was a lot of like talk about a lot of their communication is actually like low sonic
yeah,
rumbling, which is not audible to the human ear. And so
yeah.
I was aware of research around that. So I guess that fits into that sort of sphere.
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah, totally. There's sort of like that's the infrasonic, so basically stuff that's below human hearing range, but which we might perceive as actual rumbles, like vibration, and then the stuff that we can hear, and then there's a lot of things that are higher frequencies, the ultrasound that we can't hear. So a lot of insects making sounds up there, bats echolocating up there, underwater, lots of dolphins and other toothed whales making really high frequency sounds that we can't hear. Yeah, so it's really cool because there's like these hidden worlds that
yeah,
like in your day-to-day life, you're just not even thinking about like,
yeah.
you're not thinking about what you can't hear and what you can't see, but there's a lot. Um, and there's different animals have come up with different adaptations to be able to communicate that way.
Yeah, and something you mentioned there with like you're monitoring well both with the birds and also with the dolphins there, I guess is you mentioned about the impact of the solar eclipse and you mentioned about wildfires, and I guess it can sort of inform like as we we're sort of developing and moving more and more into these sort of spaces with nature is how humans impact them and positively and negatively. So it's all not all necessarily negative, isn't it? And we are capable
Right.
of doing positive things as well. So it gives you that sort of feedback loop, doesn't it?
Yeah, yes, yeah. Early, so when I was in graduate school, I uh, did my research on a damselfish that makes sounds.
Okay.
Um, and we were working out at Johnston Atoll, which is it was an interesting place because it was a wildlife sanctuary and also a military base.
Oh wow. Okay. Wow.
So it's like 1,000 kilometers southwest of Hawaii, and there's like a couple of things that struck me about working there. So it was where the United States was destroying their chemical weapons stockpile by incinerating
Oh,
it.
wow.
And
Okay.
like the chemical weapons that were in Germany got brought over and incinerated there. Um, and on land, there's like just huge populations of nesting seabirds and things.
Yeah.
Um, and and underwater, they had done like the main island was like a landing strip, and they had done dredging and things so that ships can get in and out of there. And then when you're diving, what I realized is like all this other like the chemical weapons incineration that was going on and other bad things that happened in the 50s there. Like the thing that was the worst was the dredging.
Oh,
Like that
okay.
like habitat destruction
Yeah, yeah.
was way worse. And then but the corals on the rest of it were just absolutely like gorgeous and the fish populations because there really wasn't fishing um were amazing. Um and that stuck with me. And then so when that chemical weapons incineration program finished, they basically shut down the plants and basically let the wildlife take back the island. And um, the birds recolonized the main island and turned it back into nesting habitat. And so there's been recently they were talking about using that for the Starship landing.
Okay.
They got a lot of pushback, and so that's not going to happen. But it was the things that it showed me was like habitat destruction is like always like the worst thing, and um, and then also things can come back,
Yeah.
and a lot of times you just have to do nothing.
Yeah.
It's like just leave it alone,
Yeah,
and
nature does have an incredible propensity for recovery once it's
yeah,
given the space and the time to do it.
yeah,
I know I had some amazing conversations with people who were involved in the DR Congo, and they were actually it was local women were helping to replant trees both that they could use for the community, but also to expand the forest where they've been cut down. And the scientists had been expecting it to like sort of take 40 years to reach a certain point, and they were already seeing like those indicators that they expected at 40 years at 10 years. And
yeah, yeah,
it's it's something to it's not to sort of excuse us and say we can do anything. It's to say that even where there has been damage done, there is hope still that recovery is possible. Whether it's recovery to exactly what it was before is not
yeah.
necessarily, but it can still be valuable for nature as well in the future. So I think, it's a lovely story of yours that, quite a, it's, but these things people may not have never have heard of that place, and hopefully people will go and
Yeah,
have a
no, Google,
look
I mean,
and
Google it.
yeah.
It's fascinating, like sociologically and environmentally, and yeah, it's yeah,
Which the longer I do this podcast, the more intrinsically I realize that those two things are linked is the sociological side of it with with the environmental side, and you can't separate it, which is what is so lovely about your product, the Haiku box as well, is because it is appealing to people to really bring them involved and get involved with the kind of nature
yeah, yeah.
story, and being part of its future, and being reconnected to it, which is so important. But is so you mentioned you had a couple of things. You mentioned the dolphins. Is there anything else that you're working on?
Yeah, so we have uh so this week we had the similar dolphin system, but it was set up in Northwest Territories in Canada. Uh, like uh, way up there. And so there's a community, a native community in Canada that is interested in monitoring these beluga whales that will
Oh,
actually
okay.
come into this. So it's the ocean, but it's like really complicated like land structures with ins and outs and stuff. And so when winter starts coming, they can get stuck in there if their entrances like, freeze over.
Oh,
So
wow,
they're
okay.
kind of they're wanting a system that can basically tell them, are there belugas in here, and can you help them get out? Um, and so that's a really interesting project because it's with Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada we're collaborating with, but then they're working with the local communities to basically have them run the monitoring. So
Oh wow, fascinating. Yeah,
yeah,
it's just I guess the sky's the limit, isn't there? Of like, the different way it's basically limited by people's imagination of what you could use this application for, and it's
yeah.
just
No, I mean it's crazy. Just like we were looking at it on the map, and it just kind of blown away because it's just out so remote, and it's like, oh, you have satellite communications anywhere on Earth now. Like anyone has
yeah.
satellite, and anyone with some reasonable resources you can communicate anywhere. And that's just hugely different even than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, so I think your product the HaikuBox you need access to home Wi-Fi, is that right?
Yeah,
To
so they need to be connected to home Wi-Fi and also connected to home power.
Okay.
So yeah, one thing we learned was that in Europe, there's a lot fewer outdoor power outlets, mains
Yeah.
outlets, they call them, in Europe than in the United States. Um, so yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we
Europe people figure it out.
yeah, I think I was looking at the UK supplier, and he I think puts he attaches his to a power bank, and has that in a sort of
Yeah,
waterproof container,
yeah,
so that he can get around that, because yeah, we tend not to have so many, like, plug sockets outside, which is quite common in other cultures, but not so
yeah.
common for us. But yeah, it's just I mean, I just sort of thought, make people aware of that in case they were thinking like they can go and put it like in, I don't know, a couple of acre field with nothing around. But I mean, like you say, there's ways and means around it, that you
Yeah, no,
that
we've
you
had
can.
like we have people in New York City who like they're plugged in inside and then they just kind of work the cable through their window and just mount it outside their
Yeah.
apartment. And yeah.
Yeah, no, and I suppose it's just getting started. And are there any like interesting trends that you've already seen? Like, you were mentioning like it helps with monitoring migratory species and
So Amy was just starting to look at migration of like black and white warblers,
okay,
uh, which come in like February, March. But the interesting thing is there's in the US has been a bird banding program that goes back pretty far. Which is under threat right now for funding, but
yeah,
it's a story.
like a yeah, it's a story
But
across a lot of
there are
your
records. Yeah, so the cool thing is there's records from the like 50s. And so we're just starting to look at that and go, are they migrating sooner? And if so, how much? And so it's tricky and it's also just kind of figuring out like, are just because we have so many devices, are we more likely just to pick them up earlier than
yeah, than
finding a
historically when they
bird?
were having
Yeah.
to capture physical
Yeah.
birds. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
So that's one of the things that we're looking at, and we don't have an answer yet. But our location of the birds is generally always in front of where the lines are drawn on those old maps by like a week.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's just fascinating, isn't it, to, be aware of the changes that are happening, and also the how the advances in this technology is allowing, just more awareness than was possibly possible with, just scientists in the field, and sort of, people keeping records by what they'd seen and heard, and like your cedar waxwing story as well, of how easy it was for them to sneak through undetected. I know we get a lot of migratory species that migrate through the night as well, so that's obviously adds an extra dimension to
Yeah,
monitoring.
so there's a whole bunch of things that we want to be able to do that we don't do yet. So one of them, you mentioned species migrating in the night. So birds will make these nocturnal flight calls that oftentimes are different
Yeah,
than the songs and calls that they'll make during the day. And so being able to add those to the mix of detections would be really cool, so that we could actually see what's going on at night. And Cornell has this other really cool project where they use radar data to look at migrating birds.
Oh, wow.
So it's a website called Birdcast
Okay.
that they run in the spring and the fall. I think it's only North America. Um, and so they'll make predictions based on kind of, I guess, weather and things. But you can see like what happened last night, like, and they'll say like whatever, 30,000 birds in flight over your county and stuff. And so it's kind of interesting to look at that and also then see like, oh, did we pick up some new species today in the HaikuBox?
Yeah, and I know we've had occasions where sometimes we've had like remnants of hurricanes that have come across the Atlantic from your shores to ours, and then we get like
Yes.
an influx of a lot of these poor little American
Some
little
American
American birds.
sparrow and everyone will go crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and you know the bird forums like light up, and you know so it. I mean, I guess that's kind of interesting data that will come through over time as well, as you get more devices out there and a longer
Yeah.
period of information.
Yes. Same thing happens like even in Florida. It's like the hurricane has come through and then suddenly like there's some flamingos in Tampa Bay, which historically they may have been there because there are some in the Everglades. But yeah, it's pretty funny. So when we see the stories that from the US perspective, and it's like, oh, we're looking for this bird, and we're like, that's funny.
I know that we get very excited when we get the American the American birds over here. But oh well, it's been amazing talking with you, David. It's really like it's a fascinating product, and I think just kind of really in like the early days almost of what it's going to be capable of and what it's going to be able to generate for the sort of conservation side of it, and
Yeah.
also for people to just be able to get like that whole another like window into like the world around them and understand much more of what's going on. But is there anything that you would like to leave people with that we've I will have your website in the show notes for people so that they can go and learn more and also hopefully purchase one and become their own citizen scientists feeding data into the conservation programs for you.
Yeah. The thing I would want to leave it with people with is, if you have the ability, go plant some native plant, anything. Go do it
Yeah,
now. Do that before you buy a haiku box.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. No, it's really it's such a it's one of those things that seems almost too easy, I think. Sometimes people feel like, they have to do something really big and grand to like feel like they're changing the world, but actually it's something that I'm very passionate about. I talk about all the time. It's just,
yeah.
supporting your native species is, the foundation stone that everything is built upon and from the
Right.
ground
No,
up.
like go plant that tree that's going to outlive you,
Yeah.
right? That tree is going to keep giving for
Yeah, I've got one of those. I planted an English oak tree, I think probably about 10 years ago, and I think he was about 3 years old, and planted it, and I'm like, oh, one day you're gonna be huge.
it will be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
It's
take time.
I think it's what do they say that you plant the trees whose shade you will never enjoy, and then that's your
Yep.
legacy to the world, isn't it?
Yep.
It's
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But oh, it's been an absolute pleasure, David, to learn a little bit more about you, a little bit more about bioacoustics and the amazing like possibilities it has for helping us understand like the natural world around us and our impact on it and how we can have a positive impact on it as well and how as individuals we can be involved in these big sort of conservation global level ecosystems and feedback information and feel like we're doing our part so we feel a bit more empowered in
Yes.
in
No,
helping make a
absolutely.
difference.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fiona. It's been a great conversation, and I appreciate what you're doing with your podcast.
Thanks, David. Thank you so much for listening to the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I truly hope this conversation has brought some hope and inspiration into your life. I would love to have these messages ripple out across the world. So if you can, please share this episode with your friends leave a review on your favourite podcast player and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to connect with me on the links provided in the podcast description. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. But don't forget to simply get out there and enjoy the natural world.